The fall of Owen Hart. Owen Hart stood on a narrow catwalk in the rafters of the Kemper Arena in Kansas City. It was May 23, 1999. Below him, 16,000 fans watched the wrestling ring. He was dressed in a superhero costume with a blue cape. The plan was for him to lower down slowly on a cable for a dramatic entrance. He wore a harness connected to the wire by a single metal clip. This clip was designed for the rigging of sailboats, not for holding human weight. It had a quick-release trigger that only required 6 pounds of pressure to open. He adjusted his cape trying to get comfortable, unaware that the fabric was pressing against the sensitive latch. He was nervous about the height, but he trusted the setup. He stepped off the platform. For a moment, the wire held his weight. And then, the cape snagged the trigger. The metal clip opened instantly. There was no backup safety line to catch him. Owen fell 78 feet through the open air. The fall was silent. He plummeted toward the ring, his arms flailing as he tried to grab the air. The fall took less than 3 seconds. He hit the top rope of the wrestling ring chest first. The impact was violent and loud, a sickening thud that echoed through the arena. It threw him into the center of the mat where he slid to a stop. The crowd cheered. They thought it was a stunt. They waited for him to stand up and wave. But inside the ring, the referee saw the truth. Owen's chest was crushed. His skin was turning blue. He wasn't moving. The force of the fall had torn a major blood vessel inside his chest, causing catastrophic internal bleeding. The announcers, Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler, usually loud and energetic, stood frozen in shock. The medical team rushed in, cutting his costume off to perform CPR right there in front of the live audience. The cheers turned to confused murmurs as the paramedics loaded him onto a stretcher and rushed him through the curtain. He died of internal bleeding before he reached the hospital. The death of Perro Aguayo. On March 21, 2015, Perro Aguayo Jr. was in a tag team match in Tijuana, Mexico. He was wrestling against Rey Mysterio. The match was fast and loud. Perro ran toward the ropes. Rey Mysterio jumped and kicked him in the shoulder. This was a standard move. Perro was supposed to fall onto the middle rope in order to set up the next stunt. Perro fell, but his trajectory was wrong. His neck hit the vinyl-covered steel rope. It did not catch him softly. The rope acted like a solid bar. It snapped his head back with extreme force. The force fractured his neck and severed his spinal cord. He went limp instantly. His body slid down until he was kneeling on the apron, his arms draped over the rope, his eyes staring blankly at the floor. The match continued around him. The other wrestlers thought that he was just acting hurt. Rey Mysterio performed his next move, swinging through the ropes just inches above Perro's head. The movement shook the cables, jostling Perro's broken neck. Perro then slumped to the bottom of the ring. The fans in the front row shouted that he wasn't moving. His partner, Manic, walked over and shook him, trying to wake him up for the next sequence. The referee finally checked him. He tried to speak to him, but Perro's eyes were blank and fixed. Realization spread slowly through the ring. The wrestlers stopped fighting and gathered around him. They tried to shake him awake, but he didn't respond. The paramedics then arrived and carried him out through the screaming crowd. He was pronounced dead at the hospital shortly after arrival. The King's final match. Mitsuharu Misawa was a legend in Japan. On June 13, 2009, he stepped into the ring in Hiroshima. He was 46 years old. His body was already broken from decades of hard hits. He had trouble walking before the match, but he refused to stop performing. The crowd chanted his name, expecting another classic performance from the man in the emerald green trunks. During the fight, his opponent grabbed him from behind. This was a setup for a so-called back suplex. The opponent lifted Misawa into the air and then threw him backward. Misawa was supposed to land flat on his back in order to spread out the impact. Instead, he under-rotated. He landed high on his shoulders, his chin tucked deeply into his chest. The entire weight of his body drove his head into the mat. The pressure was too much for his damaged neck. The bones connecting his skull to his spine separated completely. He lay motionless on the green canvas. The referee asked him if he could continue, but Misawa did not answer. His skin began to turn purple as his breathing stopped. The referee waved his arms to stop the match. The other wrestlers then rushed into the ring, discarding their character in order to help their mentor. The doctor then climbed into the ring and tried to find a pulse. The silence in the arena grew heavy. Fans began to cry as they watched the chest compressions fail. Paramedics then loaded him up onto a stretcher, but the damage to his spinal cord was irreversible. He died in the ambulance on the way to the university hospital. Oro's bump of death. Jesús Silva, known as Oro, was a young star in Mexican wrestling. He was 21 years old and he wanted to be famous. On October 26, 1993, he told his friends that he planned to take a quote-unquote dangerous bump to impress the crowd. He wanted to land directly on his head to make the hit look real. He ignored warnings from veteran wrestlers to play it safe. During the match, his opponent ran at him with a clothesline. Oro jumped. He spun in the air, and he drove his own head into the mat intentionally. It looked brutal. The crowd gasped at the sound of the impact. Oro rolled over. He tried to stand up, pushing his hands against the canvas, but his legs gave out beneath him. He stumbled and fell near the corner post, clutching his chest. His brother, who was also in the match, ran over to check on him. Oro looked up and whispered, quote, "Don't move me." Those were his last words. He closed his eyes and he drifted into unconsciousness. The fans, thinking that it was excellent acting, threw coins into the ring as a sign of respect. The coins landed around his still body. The impact had ruptured a blood vessel inside his brain. The medics carried him out on a stretcher. As they moved him through the tunnel, his breathing became shallow and then stopped. The paramedics tried to revive him, but the bleeding inside his skull just couldn't be stopped. He died in the ambulance before receiving medical care. The injury of Plum Mariko. Plum Mariko was a pioneer in Japanese women's wrestling. By August of 1997, she had wrestled hundreds of matches. Her body was failing. She complained of severe headaches that blinded her for hours. She frequently forgot the choreography of her matches mid-fight. Her friends told her to rest, but the culture of the business demanded toughness. She kept working, swallowing painkillers in order to sleep. She wrapped her head in thick bandages before fights, using them for support and protection. On August 15th, she was in a tag team match in Hiroshima. Near the end, her opponent, Mayumi Osaki, lifted her up for a so-called Liger Bomb. Mayumi grabbed Plum by the waist and hoisted her high up into the air. Plum hung upside down for a split second, her feet pointing at the lights. And then Mayumi dropped to her knees, driving Plum's upper back and neck into the canvas with incredible speed. It was a move that she had taken 1,000 times. But this time, the mat did not absorb the shock. The impact transferred directly through her neck into the base of her skull. The brain, already bruised from previous injuries, shifted violently inside her skull, rupturing a vessel. She did not get up. Her partner tried to tag her hand, but Plum lay motionless. The audience thought that she was just selling the move. But then they heard a strange sound. Plum began to snore loudly. That sound came from involuntary, irregular breathing as her brainstem failed. Her partner tried to lift her up by the arm, but she was dead weight at that point. Her head lolled back unnaturally. The referee leaned in close and saw that her pupils were both dilated and unresponsive. The medical team realized that she was comatose and rushed her out of the ring on a stretcher. She passed away the following day from severe brain trauma. Luther Lindsay's fatal win. Luther Lindsay was one of the toughest men in the business. On February 21, 1972, he was wrestling in Charlotte, North Carolina. The match was intense. Luther battered his opponent, Bobby Paul, for 10 minutes. He prepared for his finishing move, the diving splash. He climbed up to the second rope. He jumped up into the air, and he landed chest first on his opponent. The impact was heavy. Luther stayed on top of the man for the pin. The referee dropped to the mat to count. 1, 2, 3. Bell rang. Luther had won. Bobby then tried to push Luther off, but Luther was dead weight. The man struggled to breathe under Luther's heavy frame. He tapped Luther on the shoulder, waiting for him to get up and celebrate. But Luther did not move. The referee grabbed Luther's arm to raise it up in victory, but the arm fell limp. The referee looked at Luther's face. His eyes were fixed and staring up at the ceiling. Realization suddenly hit the official, and he signaled frantically for help. Luther had suffered a fatal heart attack on impact. The crowd cheered for the winner, not knowing that they were cheering for a corpse. It ultimately took several men to lift him off of the opponent. These wrestlers had spent their lives blurring the line between performance and reality, until no one noticed when the acting stopped. Life is fragile. Treat today like it matters.